When I click submit on this Flutter app, it validates this input form to check if I have put in my name, if I have put in a valid email address, and if I have put in a number of passengers that complies with the maximum allowed, which is 8. If you're interested in learning how to set up text inputs that validate continuously as the user types, you can check out my text form field validation video later. For now, let's code this up from scratch. We start off with an empty VS Code window. The first thing we'll do is open up the folder that we created specifically for this project. Then we will open up the terminal and use the Flutter create demo app command to create a new Flutter project. We can see that our new project has been created. I have also added this .vs code folder with this settings.json file, mostly to keep the IntelliSense pop-ups from showing up as I type the code. Let's close this terminal and go over to our main.file to start writing our code. I'll start by changing the device to Chrome so that we're able to run this app on the browser, and then I'll create a new folder which I'll call images, which is where we're going to put the image that we're going to use for our background. I'll open up the file explorer, copy the image of the balloon from our collection of images and paste it in this new folder. Next, we'll go to our pubspec.yaml file, scroll down to the assets section and comment this code and remove this extra text so that we remain with a line pointing to the images folder. Now that we're able to use this image in our project, let's go back to our main.file, change the title of the app, remove the comments in the code and remove some of the code so that we remain with just a blank scaffold. Let's start by creating the variables we need for this app, which are a string called name, another string called email, another string called number of passengers, and a boolean called booking complete, which by default will be false. Inside the body of the scaffold, we are going to create a stack whose first child will be our background image. For this, we are going to use a sized box whose height will be the screen height, its width will be the screen width, and its child will be an image.asset, which will show us the hot air balloon image with a boxFit.coverFit property to make sure the image fills up the entire sized box. The second child of this stack will be our foreground content, and here we will have a center widget whose child will be an opacity widget with an opacity of 0.9, and the child of this opacity widget will be our card. We will give this card a border radius of 15 pixels, and its child will be a container widget with a width of 200 pixels and an all-round padding of 15 pixels. We will use a ternary function to determine the child of this container. If booking is not complete, we will display a form. In this form, we need a key which we are going to use inside the submit button to trigger validation. And so under the variables list at the top here, we are going to create a global key that takes a form state, and we will call this form global key. Inside our form, we will set the key as the form global key, and the child of this form will be a list view with the shrink wrap set to true. At the top of this list view, we will have two center aligned text widgets that say book your balloon safari, each with a text style to set the font size to 18 and the font weight to 600, with a sized box between them and a sized box after them for spacing, after which we will move on to the name text form field. Inside this text form field, in the decoration property, we are going to put a hint text that says your name. In the validator property, we're going to use an if-else statement to return an enter your name error message if the input is empty, and in the onSaved property, we're going to set our named variable to the user's input. As we shall see later on, this onSaved event is going to be triggered by the submit button. After this text form field, we'll have a sized box for spacing and then move on to our email text form field. Inside this text form field, in the decoration property, we're going to put a hint text that says your email, and in the validator, we're going to use the email validator package to check the validity of the email. Let's open up our browser and visit pub.dev to check out this package. Let's type in email validator inside this search bar and hit enter. This first result is what we're looking for, so let's click on it and head over to the installing tab. Here we can see that one of the ways to get this package into our project is through the Flutter pub add email underscore validator command. So let's close this window and open up our terminal. First, we will use the cd command to change the current folder to the demo underscore app folder, and then use the Flutter pub add email underscore validator command to get this package into our project. Let's go to our pubspec.yaml file to check out our new package. If we scroll to the dependencies section, we can see that email validator has been added as one of the dependencies in this project. Let's go back to our main.file. At the top of this file, let's import our email validator package. Back in our text form field, inside the validator, we will will first check if the input is not empty. If it is, we will return an error message that says enter an email address. If our input is not empty, we will use email validator.validate to validate this input. If it is valid, we will return null. Otherwise, we will return an error message that says enter a valid email. In the onSaved property, we will set the email variable to the user's input. After that, we will create a sized box for spacing and move on to the number of passengers text form field. In the decoration property of this text form field, we are going to put a hint text that says number of passengers, in short, maximum 8. Inside the validator property, we will first check if the input is not empty. If it is, we're going to return an error message that says enter the number of passengers. If this input is not empty, we are going to check if it matches a regular expression that ensures we only have digits as the input. If this input does not match this regular expression, we will return an error message that says enter a valid number of passengers. But if it does, we will check if this input is greater than 0. If this input is not greater than 0, we will return an error message that says minimum 1 passenger. Otherwise, we will check if this input is less than or equal to 8, and we're using the int.parse method to convert our text input to an integer so that we can check if it's greater than 0 and less than or equal to 8. If this input is not less than or equal to 8, we will return an error message that says maximum 8 passengers. Otherwise, this input will have passed all our checks and we will return null. In the onSaved property, we will set our number of passengers variable to the user's input, after which we will add a sized box for spacing and move on to the submit button. For this, we will use an elevated button to which we will apply a button style to set its background color to red. In the onPressed property, we are going to use an if statement to validate the current state of the form using the form global key that we assigned as the key to our form. And if all the validators pass, we are going to use a setState function to save the current state of the form, thus triggering the onSaved properties of the text form fields, and at the same time, we will set the booking complete boolean to true. We will set the child of this elevated button to a text widget that says submit, and then move on to what we will display if booking is complete. Here we will display a list view with the shrink wrap property set to true. At the top of this list view, we will have a text widget that says booking complete with a font size of 18 and a font weight of 600, then a sized box for spacing, followed by a text widget that says booked by, followed by another sized box for spacing. After that, we'll have a text widget that displays the name variable with a font size of 16 and a font weight of 600, then a sized box for spacing, then another text widget that says email, followed by a sized box for spacing. After this, we will have a text widget that displays our email variable with a font size of 16 and a font weight of 600, followed by a sized box for spacing, then a text widget that says number of passengers, followed by a sized box for spacing. After this, we will have a text widget that displays our number of passengers variable with a font size of 16 and a font weight of 600, followed by a sized box for spacing. We are done writing our code, so let's save this project and build this app to check it out. Our app has now been built. Let's close this inspector tab, close this debug console, and zoom in on our browser window. When we click submit, we see that we get error messages on all 3 text form fields. Let's first check out this name text form field. We can see that as long as the input is not empty, this text form field passes the validation check. Let's now check out the email text form field. We can see that as long as the input has an @ and a period in the normal email format, it passes the validation check. Let's now move on to the number of passengers text form field. We can see that as long as the input is a digit, is greater than 0, and is less than or equal to 8, it passes the validation check. And that's how you do form validation in Flutter. If you have enjoyed this video and found value in it, be sure to give it a thumbs up and share it with someone who might find it useful as well. And if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel with the notifications turned on so that you get notified every time I upload a new video.